with Democratic lawmakers just last week. The president claimed that voters were actually bussed in from Massachusetts to New Hampshire to vote illegally. Where is the evidence there? The president's senior policy advisor, Stephen Miller, didn't offer any of that up when he took the cameras over the weekend, but did have this to say.
And many highly qualified people, like Kris Kobach, the Kansas Secretary of State, have looked deeply into this issue and have confirmed it to be true and have put together evidence. And I suggest you invite Kris Kobach onto your show, and he can walk you through some of the evidence of voter fraud in greater detail.
All right, so joining me now to discuss is the Kansas Secretary of State, Kris Kobach, who's cited right there by Stephen Miller. So, Mr. Secretary, it's great to have you. Thanks so much for coming in. Stephen Miller says anyone who works in New Hampshire knows that this happened, except every big-name Republican there, Republicans I'm speaking to, say that it did not happen. Miller says, look to you, sir, for the evidence. Where is it?
Okay, well, I just got off the phone with the New Hampshire Secretary of State, Bill Gardner, and he said this. So, as you know, New Hampshire is a same-day registration state. And on Election Day, November 8th, 2016, 6,000 people registered in New Hampshire using an out-of-state driver's license as their form of identification. Of those 6,000, over 6,000, just under 3,000, so just under half, used a Massachusetts driver's license. Now, some of those are going to be legit. They're going to be people who just moved to New Hampshire and hadn't yet got a New Hampshire driver's license. But many of those will be out-of-state residents who voted in the state. And then we will have more information at the end of this month because New Hampshire just joined a 30-state program where we compare data across states, and Kansas is the host of that program, and we will see how many people voted in both New Hampshire and in another state among the 29 other states. So we'll know exactly what that number is.
You truly do believe that thousands of people came in from Massachusetts to vote in New Hampshire on Election Day?
What I know from the New Hampshire Secretary of State's office is just under 3,000 registered on Election Day with a Massachusetts driver's license.
6,000.
And what I'm saying is 6,000 from some other state's driver's license. Of those 6,000, just under 3,000 were were Massachusetts. And so we do know that a lot of people did that, and we will have data at the end of the month how many of those 6,000 people voted in both New Hampshire and in one of the other states on Election Day in 2016.
Mr. Secretary, data at the end of the month, and you're saying, no, but here, wait a second. Stephen Miller, over the weekend, just yesterday, said that thousands did vote illegally. He said thousands and thousands did vote illegally, definitively saying that this actually happened. You're saying that there's going to be more data coming at the end of the month. So do you have the evidence?
Well, at the end of the month, New Hampshire just joined the program, by the way. So this is the first time we will be looking at New Hampshire's numbers. No, because Bill Gardner had already made public the fact that we had 6,000 people register in New Hampshire on Election Day with another state's driver's license. That's the key clue there. So we don't know what percentage of the 6,000 voted in two states.
Votes. Voter registration problems does not equal fraudulent votes.
Sure. So let's step back and look at the big picture. So of the 30 states, we have about 3 million people who are registered in more than one state. And that's not a crime. That's just an administrative bookkeeping.
Including the president's son-in-law, including the president's treasury secretary.
Exactly, yeah. And many of your viewers are probably registered in more than one state. But what is a crime is if you actually vote in both of those states or in more than two states.
Of course it's a crime. But where is the evidence of this widespread, rampant, millions of people voting? If it had happened, why haven't we seen it, Secretary?
Well, actually, I don't know if your network has covered it, but in my state, just people voting in Kansas and another state, my office prosecutes it. I just got that prosecutorial authority a year and a half ago. We've already filed 9 cases.
From the notes that I saw,
and we have
9
6 guilty pleas.
Right. 6 guilty pleas, 1 dismissed, 2 pending. That says January 25th. 9 cases does not rampant, widespread voter fraud make.
And the 9 cases are just the ones at the top of the list. We've got many more in the hopper. We have a very small office. We've only got about 2 attorneys working on these cases. So there will be more coming out. But my point is Kansas is a small state. And if you've got a significant number of double votes, fraudulent votes in Kansas, take a state that's very large, like California or Texas, or take a state like New Hampshire, where people flood in every year because of the very popular New Hampshire primary, which draws so much activity.
I spoke with a former attorney general, a man who's been in New Hampshire politics for decades. The way he described this when talking about people being bussed in from Massachusetts to New Hampshire to vote on Election Day, not based in reality, irresponsible. It's like the Yeti. You can keep talking about it, but you're not going to find it. This is a Republican.
Well, let's not get focused on a red herring here. It doesn't matter whether the person from out of state is bussed in, or if the person from out of state registered when they were working there in February during the primaries and then votes by mail from their other state
actually made a point of
on
saying
election
it had
day
to
in
do with
November.
people being bussed in, Mr. Secretary.
It can be both. It can non-New Hampshire residents can vote in New Hampshire either by being bussed in or driving in themselves, or by voting by mail from their home state of Massachusetts or New York or wherever it is. And we will have some much harder numbers.
Right, but you know the folks in New
Hampshire,
Mr. Secretary, folks in New Hampshire also voted and elected a Republican governor in that very same election. How often is it that people who are going to be brought in, no matter how what, to vote illegally are going to split a ticket?
One of the interesting things we found in prosecuting this crime in Kansas is that both Republicans and Democrats do it. It seems people realize that they are actually registered in 2 states, and some people, a small minority, but some people are tempted to go ahead and cast ballots in both states, and it's a bipartisan problem.
Small minority.
We don't know. Let's say we discover
millions and millions of widespread, rampant, illegal votes in this country.
Well, but in New Hampshire, we have 6,000 prospective cases. We'll find out what percentage of those 6,000 are legit New Hampshire residents and what percentage are actually not New Hampshire residents.
I appreciate it. I can't wait to see that evidence.
As you know,
but
the margin was pretty narrow. And
but again, 6,000 prospective
margin was pretty narrow. It was only 1,000 votes.
But what Stephen Miller and the president said over the weekend is this is exactly why they lost in New Hampshire. Not saying that these prospective cases, they said they were illegal votes.
But as you know, in a close race, which we had in New Hampshire, 1,000 vote margin in the Senate race, 2,700 vote margin.
Even if this comes true in a month, you don't have the evidence yet.
No.
Can you acknowledge that?
I just gave you the evidence from the New Hampshire. I gave you the evidence that is not yet conclusive from the New Hampshire Secretary.
Is not confirmed. Prospective
we'll
does not mean illegal votes.
And we will know at the end of the month what percentage of those 6,000 are cases of people who do not actually reside in New Hampshire.
Well, then let us continue this conversation in 1 month. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary of State. Thank you.